What's up guys, Wizard of Oars here, and yep, you read the title right. I believe Kaido and Moria might be brothers. Although that's a pretty good theory in itself, stay tuned through the whole thing because I discuss other topics like explaining the truth of the Florian Triangle, evidence on how Oars is the Jesus in the One Piece universe, how Oars may have had Kaido's devil fruit, and Kaido's connection to Joyboy. For this video, I read all of Thriller Bark and Wano in about a 5 to 6 day span, so please remember to like and subscribe to the channel because I put my heart and soul into these videos. Thanks a lot, and now let's get into it. If you've already watched my previous videos on why Oars is Joyboy, or at least the first video on it, I'd recommend skipping this part because I'm going to be recapping some of that theory for the new watchers. For all the new ones to this theory of Oars being Joyboy, I believe Oars is Joyboy because Oda has hinted at it through many parallels and foreshadows throughout One Piece. I also have to mention how Joyboy is Oars the First. By Oars the First, I mean the Moria Oars' dad. Oars Jr. proves to us that there is 3 Oars and that he is the third one. I believe Oars the First is Onigashima, and I'll explain the confusing timelines later. Also, if you watch my intro, you can clearly see how Oda made the obvious parallel with Oars and the Straw Hats introduction scenes. Moria walks into a giant freezer while carrying Luffy's shadow, just like how Im does the same thing while carrying Luffy's wanted poster. Another thing is having Oars Jr. wear a giant straw hat made from Ace. Also, Oars' name in Japanese is based off of the sun god in Norse mythology. The world government's danger sign also has Oars on it. The Skypians and Shandians both worship a god and figure of Oars. To be honest, there's so much more, but I can't just discuss it all right here because this video isn't only about proving why Oars is Joyboy. If you're interested, I'd say go watch my other videos after you see this one, because the amount of evidence backing this theory up is insane. To start off, I'll be explaining why I think Moria and Kaido are brothers, and what this has to do with Thriller Bark and Wano. We first learn about Kaido when Moria brings him up in Thriller Bark. In chapter 456, Moria says how with this many zombies that he has now, he wouldn't have lost to that idiot Kaido in the New World the way he did last time. Kind of weird how he calls one of the most feared beings in the whole world an idiot. Well, this quote made by Moria foreshadows something that happens 500 chapters later. In Oden's backstory, we see the fight between Kaido and Moria in the part of Wano called Ringo, where apparently Moria stole Ryuma's corpse, and where Kaido killed every last member of Moria's crew. Now Kaido obviously won this fight, as stated by Moria, so why didn't he also kill him off, or at least force him to join his army? Throughout Wano, we see how Kaido forces men to join his crew by defeating them and by being superior to them. He even allowed guys like Luffy and Kid stay alive in a prison, waiting for them to eventually give in and join his pirate army. Kaido has an army of about 30,000 soldiers in size, so he must have been collecting people throughout his whole life. Since Kaido gives people 2 choices, which is either to die or to join his army, how did Moria end up avoiding both options? Moria was even able to leave with Ryuma's corpse from Wano, which seems like an impossible task, especially since Kaido killed off all his crew. Another weird thing that doesn't make sense about this whole situation is the fact that Moria seems to be an Oni. Kaido is obsessed with the Oni race, so obsessed in fact, he even calls his pirate crew the Beast Pirates, makes his crew wear horns, bought out the numbers, and even made Onigashima his base. The main core of Kaido's crew is the Tobiropo, and they also seem to be mostly made of Onis. Queen even made an artificial virus called Ice Oni. Since Kaido bases his whole army off of the Oni race, why didn't he take Moria in? I believe the reason he didn't take him in is because Moria is his brother, and because of this, he let him live and even get away with one of the strongest zombies. He killed all of his crew because he doesn't care about them, but let Moria live because they have a past together. More evidence of Kaido and Moria being brothers is a few parallels with other blood-related brothers, who are the main 2 blood brothers throughout all of One Piece. The main 2 pairs of brothers that I can think of is Shanks and Buggy, and Doflamingo and Corazon. Notice how with both pairs of brothers, there is a weaker one and a stronger one. Notice how the weaker one always dresses up as a clown. I mean literally, just look at the dudes. Another thing is that both pairs of brothers don't get along at all. Buggy seems to hate Shanks because he ruined his dream of finding all the treasures at the bottom of the sea. Corazon hates Doflamingo, well because he's terrible and an evil person. Don't these 2 relationships sound just like Moria and Kaido? Moria is the weaker brother that dresses up as a clown, while Kaido is the big shot in the world. Moria has a grudge on Kaido and hates him because of what he did to his crew. If you want even more of a parallel, the only remaining pair of brothers is Shanks and Buggy since Corazon died a while back. Notice how the 2 clown brothers were warlords, while the 2 Chad brothers are emperors. Buggy dresses up as a clown because his red nose. Moria might wear clown pants and shoes because his skin is naturally white. Another parallel with Buggy and Moria is that their right-hand men are based around a lion. Moji has a lion pet called Richie, and Absalom stitched a lion's mouth to his face. It took so long for us to find out that Shanks and Buggy were related, so I wouldn't be surprised if one day we find out that Kaido and Moria are also related. Kaido and Moria being brothers makes a lot of sense because they are both obsessed with the Oni race. Remember how I said that I believe Rocks told Kaido that Joyboy was an Oni, and that's why Kaido went to Onigashima and has so much pride in his race. The reason I think Rocks knew some of the ancient history is because he had an Oni as his Jolly Roger, which represents what he knows about the world. Rocks may have recruited Kaido and Moria, most likely because they're Onis. Being on the Rocks crew or being Kaido's brother could be how Moria learned about Oars in the first place. Wouldn't Moria being a Rocks member also make sense with the fact that he has some of the strongest Rocks pirates as zombies? What if he wanted their corpses specifically because he saw their strength when they were alive? A few Rocks pirates that he has on his crew includes Captain John, Silver Axe, and Wang Ji. Moria's knowledge on the world keeps making him more and more of an interesting character. Also remember that Moria currently joined Blackbeard's crew, which many believe is the new version of Rocks. Another thing that makes sense about Kaido and Moria being brothers would be how Moria got the land of Thriller Bark in the first place. First of all, what is Thriller Bark? Like, why is there a whole chunk of land with a castle in the middle of it? Second of all, how did this boat or island called Thriller Bark even get into the Grand Line? According to Brook, Thriller Bark is from the West Blue. If you take a look at the One Piece map, the West Blue is below the New World, while the Grand Line is on the other side of the world. This means that the Thriller Bark ship would have to go through Reverse Mountain to get to the Grand Line. In case you forgot, the Straw Hat's small-sized ship, the Going Merry, barely squeezed through Reverse Mountain. If the Going Merry can barely squeeze through it, then how can Thriller Bark, also known as the biggest ship in One Piece, get through Reverse Mountain? This doesn't make sense at all, and there could really only be one explanation. That explanation would be the fact that Kaido possibly flew Moria's ship up and over the Red Line and over to the Grand Line. We know Kaido can do this because he picks Onigashima up from the sea and floated over to Wano. It also looks like Thriller Bark is an ancient ruin and not a whole island, but only a chunk of one. If it's only a piece of land, then how did it break off the island? The Rocks pirates could have definitely broken the piece off, knowing Whitebeard's and Kaido's fruits. Kaido could have given Moria the land as a gift. I mean, how else would Moria even get a whole piece of an island as his ship? My theory goes that Moria built the boat parts first, and then Kaido flew the piece of land right in the middle of it. This piece of land doesn't fit in the mouth of Thriller Bark because it's way too big. This shows that either the boat had to be built around it or it was dropped in the middle. Even if Kaido and Moria aren't brothers, I do believe they at least share a past together and were close at some time. For the next parts of my video, I'll be talking more about Oars. The next thing with Moria and the Oars race is when he allegedly kills Oars Jr. in Marineford, and then is commanded by the higher ups to be killed. What if the real reason they commanded Doflamingo to kill Moria after Marineford was because they didn't want Moria to get Oars Jr.'s corpse? They could have also done this because they found out that he had Oars back in Thriller Bark and realized that Moria may know a bit too much. It's also never said what happened to Oars Jr.'s body, so I would assume that the world government is using his body and DNA to create an Oni army. In Punk Hazard, we learned that the world government has been trying to do this for many years, so it would make sense as to where Oars Jr. ended up going. The Vinsmokes also show us that cloning people is possible in One Piece, and now the next big step would be cloning giant Onis. Who knows, maybe the final war arc will be a bit like AOT. I believe I may have solved what the Florian Triangle is, and who the giants in the mist are as well. I'll start off by saying what we already know about the Florian Triangle. The Florian Triangle is located between Water 7 and Fishman Island. It's notoriously known for all the ships that go missing within it. Ships started going missing much before Moria showed up, which shows they don't just go missing because of his actions. Something I always wondered about was why would Moria choose this creepy and dangerous place to live? Is it just because he likes the vibes? Or maybe it's because it's a good place to lure pirates in, to steal their shadows. That would actually make sense because he's trying to build up a zombie army. I do think that could be a possibility, but I think there's another, more important reason Moria chose the Florian Triangle. What if he chose the Florian Triangle because he was searching for ancient giants? Knowing how he loves oars, I think it would all make sense. The Florian Triangle translates to Devil Triangle Zone, which may be called that because it's a place where devils live. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the giants hidden in the thick mist were ancient giants because knowing the size of Onigashima, the height could definitely match up. There's not another single creature in One Piece that it could be except for the Oni race. Even the body structure of the shadows looks like oars. The way the bottom is thick and gets thinner as it goes up. These ancient giants could have been forced to live there because the world government tried wiping them out. The only alive ancient giant that we've seen is Oars Jr., which proves that they're either a rare race or are extinct. If Oars was Joyboy, then other ancient giants most likely fought against the world government with him. I believe the last remnants of the Oars race are hiding within the Devil's Triangle Zone, waiting to return to take back what once belonged to them. Now I know Oars being Jesus in the One Piece world may sound really dumb or just flat out crazy right now, but just hear me out because there's a decent amount of evidence that backs it up. Okay, well first of all, we know that Jesus and the Bible do exist in the One Piece world because Bartholomew always pulls it up in his hand. On top of this, we see Jesus pieces many times throughout One Piece, and we see many crosses throughout Thriller Bark. We see crosses on the castle, on the heads of the Thriller Bark pirate members, and even throughout the graves of the zombies. Notice how many of the crosses throughout One Piece look like it's two bones crossing. Why would the cross symbol be two bones and not just a normal cross? Well, it's specifically a crossbone symbol because that's the exact symbol that Oars used. If you take a look at Moria's Oars, he has the exact crossbones on his clothing that people throughout the whole world use as a religious symbol. In my last video, I discussed how Joyboy is the sun god and the son of God, which in real life, many people think Quetzalcoatl, the sun god, and Jesus, the son of God, were the same thing. Wouldn't it just make sense that Joyboy is based off of Jesus? I mean, think about it. Luffy, who we all believe to be the current Joyboy, was prophesied to return, just like Jesus. Luffy saves the poor and the ones who need help, also just like Jesus. Jesus also died saving humanity from their sins, and I believe that Joyboy died by saving the world. What if that's also why Oars has the 3 skulls? The 3 skulls could represent Joyboy coming back in 2 more eras. Jesus was resurrected once and is supposed to return once again, just like how Roger may have been another Joyboy, but wasn't the 3rd and final resurrection. Remember, in One Piece, we literally have a Bible, a Noah's Ark, and an Adam tree. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if Joyboy is the Jesus figure in One Piece. The biblical references make characters like Bartholomew, Mihawk, and Whitebeard a lot more interesting than they once were. If you still don't believe Joyboy is Jesus, then take a look at this. That's an Oni head on top of the crossbones. This is a hint and foreshadowed by Oda that Oars is the Jesus of One Piece and that the crossbones is a symbol dedicated to him. To make this even more interesting, it's a grave for Brooks' crew. This is more proof that Oars is Joyboy because Brooks' ship had an Oars as the Jolly Roger and as their figurehead. The figurehead even has red hair that looks just like Oars Jr. The reason that this is proof is because the Rumbar pirates were famous for singing Bing Sake. I believe Ohara already broke down how Bing Sake was most likely a song from the past that reveals the location of the One Piece. Some interesting lines from Bing Sake are: "The merry evening sun, the birds sing as they draw circles in the sky, flying the proud skull on our flags and sails," and lastly, "never ending, ever wandering, our funny traveling tale." I'll leave the link in the description to Ohara's video because he does a great job explaining the song. Obviously, whoever wrote this song knew something about the One Piece, and I wanted to key into the line that says flying the proud skull on our flags and sails. Now you may ask, well, what does this have to do with anything? Pirates are known for having skulls on their flags to create Jolly Rogers. Well, what if I told you that in the One Piece world, the tradition of having a Jolly Roger came from Joyboy, whom I believe to be Oars. To start off, we already know how Oars was the crossbones and skulls on his clothing. The next hint is something that Oda placed in volume 1 of One Piece. This whole Oars thing has been planned from the very beginning. At the end of chapter 2, Oda puts this page. This page discusses the origin of the pirate flag and the term Jolly Roger. Notice how the last reason is that the Jolly Roger is related to Old Roger, which was a name for the devil. Remember, Oars is called a devil of the world. I believe the world government put this label on him because he went against everything they want. If the Jolly Roger origins in One Piece come from the devil, then that means they came from Oars. This would make sense as to why Jolly Rogers have a skull and crossbones just like how Oars were the same thing. Going back to Bing Sake, if this song was written by someone in the Void Century, then the line "flying the proud skulls on our flags and sails" means a lot more than we thought it meant. I don't find it a coincidence that Brooks' crew that sang Bing Sake all the time, even on their deathbed, have Oars as their Jolly Roger and as their figurehead. I also don't find it a coincidence that Frank and Usopp put Brooks' Oni head on the grave cross, which is meant to represent Jesus and Oars. I also don't find it a coincidence that the Roger Pirates sang Bing Sake on their final journey. Now that I've connected Jesus with the skull and crossbones, now you understand this tiny detail made by Oda. Notice how on the side of the Bible, there's a Jolly Roger looking skull and crossbones. The Jolly Roger is placed right in between on an actual Jesus piece, which is meant to symbolize that putting up the skull and crossbones is the same as putting up a Jesus cross. I also know the Bible has something to do with the ancient kingdom, because on the cover, you can clearly see there is symbolism of a sun and wings. The last thing I need to mention that connects Joyboy being Jesus, Oars, and Jolly Rogers isn't from Thriller Bark, but instead is a clue from Jump Island. If you take a look at Dr. Hiruluk, notice how he has 2 crosses and even has oars-looking horns that reminds me of the oars on Perona's shirt. I know he's a doctor and the cross symbols can represent that, but I do believe there's a chance it can also represent Jesus. Also remember that Dr. Hiruluk is the same guy who told Chopper that the symbol of the skull and crossbones rejects impossibilities and is a symbol of faith. The skull and crossbones is a symbol that can be interpreted in different ways in the One Piece world, but every interpretation goes back to Oars. If Oars is Joyboy and the skull and crossbones is his symbol, wouldn't he be the symbol of faith? Isn't Joyboy already a symbol of faith? Luffy is the current Joyboy and he is faith itself. Luffy even says the same thing about the pirate flag that Dr. Hiruluk says. He's also always proving that anything is possible. Another interesting thing with Dr. Hiruluk is before he dies, he has his famous quote, which is, "When does a man die? Is it when he's shot in the heart with a pistol? No. When he's stricken with a deadly disease? No. When he eats soup from a deadly mushroom? No. It's when he's forgotten." Doesn't this quote describe Joyboy? Joyboy only dies when he's completely forgotten, which is why the world government wanted to erase him from history. Even then, he isn't dead, cause his will return, and finding the One Piece will allow people to remember him. Dr. Hiruluk's grave is also at a castle which has Oars figures within it. I'll discuss the Drum Island Castle in another video because it's kind of off topic here. To wrap this up, Dr. Hiruluk shows us a lot of hints of who Joyboy is and his legacy. To wrap up Thriller Bark's connection to Oars, I want to quickly discuss some brief thoughts on what Thriller Bark might be in the first place. I've seen some things around saying it could possibly be from God Valley, but I'm not fully convinced on that yet. Maybe I'll make a video on why it could be from God Valley and also why it can't be. Let me know down in the comments if you want me to make that or not. Although I'm not sure if it's a section from God Valley, I do believe Thriller Bark could have at least been an important kingdom in the past. I also think it most likely had ties with the world government or knew some of the ancient history. The reason I believe this is because, well, first of all, why would Moria choose this specific piece of land to use as his boat? I believe Moria knows a lot more than we think he knows, and his dream is to be the king of the pirates. If he knows even a bit of the history of One Piece, which he seems to know, because he knew about Oars, he might know what kingdom this land was from. It would also make sense that this land belonged to the world government and the celestial dragons because it has a giant freezer in it. The only other place that I can really think of that also has a giant freezer is Pangaea Castle. My theory is that Oars was already in the giant freezer because there's just no way Moria can physically move the whole body of Oars into it. There's almost no way anyone can move Oars into a compacted freezer unless you built it around him or unless someone teleported him in the freezer with Law's fruit. This could also be another possibility why Moria chose that piece of land from the West Blue. He may have chose it because he found out that there was a dead Oni in it and he wanted to use it for his zombie army. Anyways, what do you guys think Thriller Bark was back in the day, and why do you think Moria chose it to live in? All throughout Wano, there have been many Oars and Oni references. I believe Kaido is looking for Joyboy, and that's also why he went to use Onigashima as his base. Before I talk about Kaido, I want to discuss a few connections with the people of Wano and Oars. As I said in my first video, I believe Onigashima is Joyboy, and that the last island that the continent puller made was Wano. After creating Wano, I theorized that he died and his head fell right where Onigashima is. Before he died, he told the Kazuki clan what he wanted them to write on the poneglyphs and where the One Piece is. Now that I've explained why Onigashima exists within the Wano borders, I want to talk about more hints throughout Wano that Oars is Joyboy. In chapter 912, Hitetsu flat out just asked Luffy if he's an ogre. Now I know he didn't literally mean that Luffy is an ogre, but this could be a foreshadow to Luffy being the same as Oars and Joyboy. In Wano, Luffy also wears horns with his samurai outfit, which could also be a hint to Oars being Joyboy. Another hint is the fact that the people of Wano have traditions of wearing Oni masks. As I said in part 3, I believe the Shandians have ogre masks because it's a tradition of showing who their leader is which was passed down from the ancient kingdom. I also discuss how the Skypians have an Oni statue that they worship and use devil horns as their sign of greetings to show who their true king is. Oars was most likely the king of the ancient kingdom, so every race pays tribute to him in some way. Maybe that's why the people of Wano still wear Oni masks even though Kaido and his crew took them over. I believe Wano's tradition of wearing Oni masks was also passed down from the Void Century, just like the Skypians and Shandians traditions. They even wear masks during the fire festivals, which doesn't make sense at all, because shouldn't they hate Kaido and Onis? The only way I can see this happening is if they traditionally wear the Oni masks during the fire festivals. Now that we've talked about a few of the hints of Oars being Joyboy and Wano, I'd like to explain Kaido's connection to Joyboy. As I said before, Kaido is obsessed with the Oni race, just like Moria. He has his whole crew wear horns, called his crew the Beast Pirates, bought the numbers, which were failed experiments, made his home Onigashima, has many Onis as his crew, and even has an Ice Oni virus. Kaido loves the Oni race, but it also seems like he's obsessed with things like a world war, dying, finding the One Piece, and Joyboy. All these inspirations can be from what he knows about the ancient history, which he may have learned from Rocks or learned throughout his own journey. Other proof of Rocks sharing knowledge with his crew is the fact that Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom are some of the only people in the world that know about the Lunarians race. Rocks could have told them that Lunarians were a godly race that used to live on top of the Red Line. I truly believe that Kaido went to Onigashima for the reason that he thinks it's Joyboy. Kaido even changed the name of Rugashima, which translates to Dragon Island, to Onigashima. Maybe the reason the island was named after a dragon was because Oars had Kaido's devil fruit back in the day. That could also be a possible reason why Big Mom gave the fruit to Kaido specifically. If Oars was the original user of Kaido's fruit, this could explain why he's known as the continent pooler. Just imagine Oars using the flame clouds to pick up and place islands all throughout the Grand Line. Another hint of Oars possibly having the dragon fruit is Fishman Island's castle. Notice how at the top there is both a dragon that resembles Kaido's fruit and horns. The Fishman castle is called Ryugu Palace, which translates to Dragon Palace. Ryugu in Japanese folklore is the palace for Ryujin, who is a dragon god. Remember, in part 3, I explained how Oars is the god that every culture worships. The dragon god Ryujin is also supposed to resemble a giant oar fish, which is another wordplay connection with the name Oars. If you want to see the other wordplays, I mentioned a lot of them in my first video, which connects Oars to Roger and Rocks. The final connection with Oars and him having the dragon fruit is the panel right before we see the dragon in Punk Hazard. Usopp first notices that there's a giant skull, but then Luffy says that even giants aren't this big. In the anime version of this, I believe you can see two horns coming out of the skull. I believe this heads in Punk Hazard for research purposes, which the world government has been trying to use to create an ancient giant army. The Punk Hazard clue is a bit more on the speculation side of things, but I do believe there's a good chance that Oars had Kaido's dragon fruit. A few hints that shows Kaido is at Wano for a bigger reason than it seems is when he tells Yamato, "I'm here because it's Wano." Kaido is trying to imply here that Wano is the most important place to him personally. How much more personal can it get than it being the place where the greatest Oni head lies? Everything Kaido wants, from a world war, Joyboy, the One Piece, pride of the Oni race, is all tied in with the land of Wano, and knowing this, Kaido made it his home. Kaido believes he's the only person who can change the world, because he's a descendant from a being that arguably changed the world more than anyone else physically and spiritually. Another thing Kaido said during this fight that stood out to me was when he tells Yamato, "Life isn't a series of simple questions with simple answers, you naive child." This is right after she asked him why he steals her and Wano's freedom. I think Kaido is trying to say here that he took away Wano's freedom for a deeper reason than Yamato can realize. She thinks he's doing what he's doing because he's a bad guy, but in reality, taking away Wano is for a reason that connects everything Kaido wants in life. Kaido also continuously brings up how the Oni race is better than humans and his racist ideals, which may lead back to what he and his ancestors have experienced. I believe Kaido's main goal in life, which is most likely to see the world government destroyed, is the reason for him doing the things that he does. Kaido is willing to do whatever it takes to create chaos in the world that betrayed his race, even if it means doing terrible things to others. He doesn't care if he takes away your freedom, your ability to express emotions, or even your life. As long as it somehow helps his dream of having a massive world war against the world government, he justifies it in his mind. Kaido is willing to make sacrifices to get what he wants, and he's even ready to die for it. I can't wait to see Luffy and Kaido's fight come to a conclusion, hoping that Kaido will reveal something or tell Luffy something about Joyboy. Well, that pretty much wraps up Moria's and Kaido's brotherly connection to Oars. If you like this video, then remember to like and subscribe. Comment anything you want to let me know, and also feel free to join my Discord. I'll leave the link down in the description. Thanks a lot for watching, and please have a good day.